Kalal Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem Rakakadash. Double honors unto the elders and the apostles who taught me this truth. This is your brother Dawad, the real brother beloved, and this is only for the
elect.
Only for the elect. The reason you came around is because you thought we had the truth and that we was men of the Lord.
One of Cheyenne Mountain's nicknames, if you will, is America's Fortress. So we do occasionally we'll call ourselves America's Fortress for a reason, and that is because we are, by design, here for the worst day in American history. We are sitting here today as the #1 DoD rated EMP protected facility. We like to say we're the most secure facility in America, because when you're doing command and control of our nation's defense, the security levels are very, very high. Hearing that thud of the blast door shutting, it leaves an impression on you that you're inside some place that not everybody can get to, and it's someplace important.
When he is about to fill his belly, God shall cast the fury of his wrath upon him, and shall rain it upon him while he is eating. He shall flee from the iron weapon, and the bow of steel shall strike him through. It is drawn, and cometh out of the body. Yea, the glittering sword cometh out of his gall. Terrors are upon him. All darkness shall be hid in his secret places. A fire not blown shall consume him. It shall go ill with him that is left in his tabernacle. The heavens shall reveal his iniquity, and the earth shall rise up against him. The increase of his house shall depart, and his goods shall flow away in the day of his wrath. This is the portion of a wicked man from God, and the heritage appointed unto him by God.
Shalom, Yasharala. This started out as being a heads up regarding the upcoming unholy day rituals being observed by the Satanic elite starting on April 19th and ending on May 1st, the day when Senior Trump suggests the quarantine could be lifted, allowing America to get back to normal, which incidentally will never happen. Babylon will never be the same. Then I happened upon this article regarding U.S. military command teams who are in charge of protecting Homeland Security being sequestered to the Cheyenne Mountain Bunker, where they will remain sealed off until the scamdemic passes. Now, this action taken, regarded as extraordinary by those in the know, is being called a necessary protective measure to ensure that in the event of a sudden security crisis, i.e. a nuclear attack or a biochemical threat, there will be enough healthy personnel, particularly troops and leaders on deck, to carry out orders just in case the threat of COVID-19 spreading worsens. This is Proverbs chapter 28, verse 1, and it reads, "The wicked flee when no man pursueth, but the righteous are bold as a lion." Now, could the American government have intel, meaning information of an imminent threat unknown to the public other than the ensuing danger, which is the coming of our power, our Lord, of course? Some suggest they're hunkering down due to the ongoing issue between China.
Okay, guys, military command teams are now moving into Cheyenne Mountain, which is an 18,000-foot bunker in the mountain, and they are being sealed off to basically protect continuity of government. Now, when you protect continuity of government, usually the president is also isolated. Now, I don't necessarily believe that the president is doing press conferences from the White House at this time. And if you were the president and you were actually doing them from a concealed or sealed off bunker in Cheyenne Mountain, let's say, NORAD, you would have to portray the image of him doing it in the White House. So you would have to have the reporters in there also, so that it looks like they're actually doing it from the White House. Now, I would also assume that the room that you're looking at when they do these press conferences is probably a made-up room that is in NORAD, the Cheyenne Mountain bunker. Or maybe not. Maybe he is doing press conferences from the White House. But I have to assume that these press conferences are being done from a bunker, okay? First of all. If they're moving military teams into the bunker for them to be sealed off from this virus, I'm sorry, I just don't believe that it's an actual virus that we're gonna fight against. I think we're lining up for a war with China. Things are really serious, and you have to be at DEFCON 1, like I said in one of my previous videos. You have to be at DEFCON 1 for the military to be moving into the mountain.
This would explain the social distancing in the White House press briefings and the lack thereof. Speaking of social distancing, hip-hop producer Pharrell, in the middle of doing an interview with CNN yesterday, made a very valid point that the poverty-stricken could not afford the luxury of social distancing, and went on to point out the disparity in healthcare between the well-to-do and the have-nots, and also addressed the contention which sounded like people of color were being accused of being more susceptible to the coronavirus because they, wait for it, don't take care of themselves. This is Psalms chapter 58 verse 4, and it reads, "Their poison is like the poison of a serpent. They are like the deaf adder that stoppeth her ear." And this perfectly sums up the arrogance of Esau, the powers that shouldn't be in the overall establishment. They refuse to listen to the truth, never mind uphold it, and they vigorously stand by the poison they spew, no matter how retarded or out of touch. Willful ignorance is a drug, and they're on it. But the scriptures say this, and this is Proverbs chapter 21 verse 13, and it reads, "Whoso stoppeth his ears at the cry of the poor, he also shall cry himself, but shall not be heard." When Yahushua returns, there will be a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth, and that's just something that the wicked elite got to deal with. Anywho, a potential conflict with the usual suspects, North Korea and Iran, is also being suggested. Consequently, this involves Russia, who is a protector of Iran's interests, as well as China, who is now getting the oil America failed to get out of the Middle East, pursuant to Ezekiel 30. You know what? Let's just get it. This is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 7, and it reads, "Be thou prepared," and this is speaking of Russia, in the scriptures is Magog, "and prepare for thyself thou, and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them." Russia has a responsibility to watch and guard over the other nations in that eastern region, particularly Iran, with armed assistance, where they will all be united in the War of Armageddon, aka World War III, according to the scriptures and prophecy of this chapter. So by now you know, you have to know, the wicked is Esau, Edom. I like to say the white establishment because we know that Israel is scattered across all nations, and not every Israelite is going to look like Wesley Snipes, and not every Edomite is going to look like Brock Lesnar. On many occasions, we know the elite conduct operations such as this, where there's a potential for danger, just like there's a potential to stub your toe when you get out of bed. Sure, anything is possible, and when you're not looking is when the worst can happen, but America has a tendency of jumping the gun and doing the most when no one is after them, and is definitely guilty of selling wolf tickets to events that are far from real and show no evidence of ever existing. Going back to Proverbs, let's pick up at verse 2, and it reads, "For the transgression of a land many are the princes thereof, but by a man of understanding and knowledge the state thereof shall be prolonged." Meaning, in a sinful nation, there are continuous leaders, or many leaders in succession, figurative of what you're witnessing now. Governors at odds with the president, some with each other regarding when or if an effort should be made for the country to, quote unquote, finally get back to normal, and if so, when. But by a man of understanding and knowledge, the state thereof shall be prolonged. Meaning, if America had the capacity to listen to a man of understanding, starting with Yahweh Hashem Yahushua and through his prophets and men of the Lord, they would have sidestepped this madness, if not endured to the end. But we know, given Esau's transgressions, which have reached unto heaven, pursuant to Revelation 18 and 5, and his unwillingness to listen, that is not at all possible. There's a Latin saying,
Delira reges, plectuntura kivi.
Meaning when kings go mad or when kings play madmen, their people suffer for it. If America was being run by just and ethical men, you wouldn't have all this hunkering down, potential uprisings, and all this economic turmoil. In turn, if the people were at all just, they wouldn't be facing these judgments of the Most High Power, Yahweh. I said all that to say this. This article being over 2 weeks old, one would come to the conclusion this is just business as usual. Move along, nothing to see here, but then this next story came to light. Let's watch this clip and after I'll make it all make sense.
District of Columbia Mayor Muriel Bowser yesterday ordered a 1-month extension of the state of emergency as cases in the region grow at a rapid pace. Federal officials in the nation's capital expect a New York-like epidemic in the district, Maryland and Virginia, one that could potentially cripple the government. No one wants to talk evacuation, especially when there's nowhere to go, says a senior military officer working on continuity of government planning. He requested anonymity because he is not authorized to speak on the record. But a little-known military task force charged with evacuating Washington has already been activated, a task force charged with the most sensitive government mission of securing Washington in the face of attackers, foreign and domestic, and if necessary, moving White House and other key government offices to alternate locations. Activated on March 16, Joint Task Force National Capital Region (JTF-NCR) is chartered to defend Washington on land, in the air, and even on its waterfronts. The Special Task Force, the only one of its kind in the country, demonstrates how there are two sides of government preparedness. The public face, and even the day-to-day work of most men and women assigned to JTF-NCR, is the same as it is everywhere else in the country: medical support, delivering supplies, manning health check stations. But behind the scenes, JTF-NCR is responsible for what the military calls homeland defense, what to do in the face of an armed attack on the United States, everything from guarding Washington's skies to preparing for the civil unrest that could occur if a nuclear weapon were detonated in the capital. But most immediate, JTF-NCR is charged with facilitating continuity of government, particularly moving civil and military leaders to secret locations where the order given to evacuate the city. Ever since National Guards started to activate countrywide, Pentagon officials have insisted that men and women in uniform are not conducting secret missions and that they will not administer or enforce stay-at-home quarantines. The Pentagon has also rejected reports, including articles in Newsweek, about martial law or other extreme contingency plans, arguing that the Guard remains under strict control of state governors, while federal troops support civil agencies like FEMA. And yet the activation of Joint Task Force National Capital Region, including almost 10,000 uniformed personnel to carry out its special orders, contradicts those assurances. JTF-NCR is not only real and operating, reporting directly to the Secretary of Defense for some of its mission, but some of its units are already on 24/7 alert, specially sequestered on military bases and kept out of coronavirus support duties to ensure their readiness.
Okay, so let's assume this is just another day at the office and the Fed is just following protocol. Cool. Or there is the possibility this story really bears no merit or foundation, given the source being Newsweek, who's not particularly known for breaking stories, groundbreaking exposés, or its investigative reports. This led me back to my initial lesson, which was the upcoming Satanic observance of Beltane, starting on April 19th, in itself a historically significant day, and I remembered the significance of May 1st, more importantly and at the same time relative to the idea of why the government was all batten down the hatches as of late, because the potential was there for them to do what they've been doing since they knocked the towers down, another large-scale ritual sacrifice. This is Leviticus chapter 18, verse 21, and it reads, "And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy power. I am Yahweh." These sacrifices and ritual acts that the elite conduct date farther back than 9/11. Case in point, the worship of Moloch and Baal by the Canaanites, Carthaginians, and others, including the wicked of Israel themselves who transgressed against the Lord by adopting the same practices of these other nations. Now, reading from an article I found on Reddit, April 19 is the first day of the 13-day Satanic ritual day relating to fire. The fire god Baal or Moloch / Nimrod, the sun god, also known as the Roman god Saturn, which is relative to, and I think I broke that down in a past lesson, how Saturn is Old Latin and Satan is New Latin. In any event, Saturn, Satan, the devil. This day is a major human sacrifice day, demanding fire sacrifice with an emphasis on children. This day is one of the most important human sacrifice days, and as such has had some very important historic events occur on this day. Those historic days include the American Revolutionary War, Oklahoma City bombing, the Deepwater Horizon explosion, the shooting at Columbine, incidentally was the same day and said to be done as an observance to Hitler's birthday, which in itself, the celebration of birthdays, according to the scriptures, is wicked. In the interest of time, you can go ahead and look at Job chapter 3, verse 1, then the 10th verse, the 13th verse, and following and ending with the 17th verse to get the understanding. Also, one of the most historic cases of white-on-white crime, where the Nazis murdered so-called Jews who are the line of Amalek in accordance with the scriptures in the Warsaw Ghetto by essentially burning them alive. And then there's the Branch Davidian massacre, referred to as the Waco Siege, courtesy of American federal and Texas state law enforcement, as well as the U.S. military. And who can forget Lincoln's assassination? The Boston bombing is also included here. The sinking of the Titanic and the fire at Notre Dame Cathedral, which we know was done in the observance of Easter, having nothing to do with Yahweh Shai and his resurrection. It is more or less a sacrifice in remembrance of the Queen of Heaven, Ishtar, Astarte, and her son Tammuz, who is Nimrod. All instances occurring during this pagan, which is satanic, observance of Beltane. Reading down in the article, it says, remember, the devil considers war to be a most propitious way to sacrifice, for it kills both innocent children and adults. This is Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 10, and it reads, there shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or his daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all that do these things are an abomination unto Yahweh, and because of these abominations Yahweh thy power doth drive them out from before thee. Thou shalt be perfect with Yahweh thy power. For these nations which thou shalt possess, speaking of you Edomites along with the other nations, hearkened unto observers of times and unto diviners. But as for thee, Yahweh thy power hath not suffered thee so to do. Then I remembered while we were awake, paying attention to whatever distraction the elite set up in front of us, I remembered the covert operation the U.S. was carrying out against Venezuela that the MSM mainstream media was failing to report. How many of you were aware the Trump administration is currently carrying out the largest military operation in Latin America in 30 years in Venezuela as we speak, happening right now? The allegation, wait for it, narco-terrorism. The real reason, wait for it, oil. Instantly I thought this might be the next place they would hit and exploit, because you know how much they like bombing innocent women and children. Whatever is going on down there, the military has some involvement. Another story I came across, the U.S. Air Force has sent 3 different directed energy weapon systems to protect air forces abroad. The Huels, Phaser, and Thor weapons will guard U.S. air bases from the threat of drone strikes. shooting down any unauthorized drone that comes within microwave or laser range. The new weapons are a response to the new threat of weaponized drones and drone swarms attacking airfields. The three weapons are the high-energy laser, the phaser high-power microwave, and the tactical high-power operational responder, hence the acronyms the Huels, the phaser, and the Thor. Again, this all leads back to our Beltane and the fire sacrifice. This is Revelation chapter 19, verse 21, and it reads, "And the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceeded out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. And the sword that proceeded out of his mouth is speaking of the lasers from the chariots the world ignorantly calls UFOs, when Yahushua, Michael, and the angels finally bring it to Esau and his space force in their final rendezvous. You got lasers, we got lasers too. Back to the topic, and to reiterate and drive the point home, keep your eyes open and on the proverbial ball, Israel. Be on the lookout for any false flag / ritual fire sacrifices for occult gods during this 13-day stretch. This was supposed to be a quick heads up, so I'll close by saying the significance in May 1st is several, meaning more than one. May 1st is May Day, the word used around the world to make a distress call via radio communications, although it really originated from a word in French, I believe, for help that sounds similar. So basically a call of emergency. And also May 1st is the day the Illuminati was born. Double honors unto the elders and apostles who taught me this truth. Through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, I hope you all were edified. Yada hey Allah Yahweh. Shalom Yasharala.
Don't take that chip.